I didn't say a word when they handed me that eviction notice. I just slid the 1923 water rights deed across the table and watched 35 McMansions turn into lakefront property. The Willowbrook Estates HOA thought they could steal my grandfather's property while I was deployed in Afghanistan. These pompous bureaucrats built their perfect suburban paradise on stolen land, complete with tennis outfit Karens patrolling in golf carts. What they didn't know was that I'm an Army Corps engineer. That little earth dam on my property had been waiting 45 years for someone stupid enough to build downstream. The audacity was truly something to behold until the spillway gates opened, and their luxury development got its first taste of natural flooding. This was going to be satisfying. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below because you're about to witness the most beautiful HOA takedown involving federal water law and gravity. Let me introduce you to Jake Morrison. That's me, 34 years old, Army Corps of Engineers, and the third-generation owner of 47 acres of prime Texas land just outside Austin. My grandfather, who we all called Pops, bought this property back in 1955 when Austin was still a sleepy college town and barbecue joints outnumbered tech companies by about 1,000 to 1. Pops was the kind of man who believed in taking care of the land and the people on it. In 1978, he built a small earth dam on our property. Nothing fancy, just good engineering designed to collect rainwater for the cattle and help out our downstream neighbors during dry spells. The Army Corps of Engineers even helped him with the design. Pops always said that someday the back 40 acres would be worth something special, but for now, it was just beautiful rolling hills where we ran cattle and I learned to hunt. Then came my 2 tours in Afghanistan, where I specialized in water management and infrastructure. Turns out building wells and managing water flow in a war zone teaches you a thing or two about how precious clean water really is and how quickly people will fight over it. While I was on my second deployment, Pops passed away. The property went into a trust managed by my well-meaning but overwhelmed sister, Sarah, who lives in California and knows as much about Texas land law as I know about surfing. She hired a local property management company called Loner Land Services to handle the taxes and upkeep. The property taxes got paid automatically. But here's the thing, Sarah never actually looked at the tax assessment. Big mistake. Enter our villain. Margaret Maggie Thornwell, 52 years old, president of Willowbrook Estates HOA, and the kind of woman who drives a white BMW X7 and treats tennis outfits like business attire. Maggie's got that particular brand of passive-aggressive sweetness that Southern women perfect around age 45. You know, the kind where they'll smile while they're stabbing you in the back and somehow make it sound like they're doing you a favor. Maggie's married to City Councilman Rick Thornwell, which should tell you everything you need to know about how she gets things done. She's got a reputation for neighborhood beautification initiatives, which is fancy talk for forcing out anyone who doesn't fit her vision of suburban perfection. The smell of her expensive perfume can't quite mask the stench of cigarette smoke and entitlement that follows her around like a cloud. I came home from deployment in August 2023, ready to finally spend some real time on Pops's land. Drove down that familiar gravel road, past the old oak tree where I'd carved my initials as a kid, expecting to see the same rolling pastures and that little earth dam sparkling in the Texas sun. Instead, I found construction crews, concrete trucks, and survey stakes scattered across my back 40 like some kind of suburban invasion. The crunch of gravel under my boots felt different somehow, angrier. I could taste the dust and my own rising fury as I marched up to the construction foreman. "Sorry, buddy," he said, not looking sorry at all. "We got permits and everything. This is Willowbrook Estates property now." I called the police. Officer Martinez showed up and explained with obvious discomfort that the HOA had filed an adverse possession claim while I was overseas. Apparently, when nobody's actively using land for a certain period, and if you can prove you've been improving it, you can sometimes claim ownership. It's an old law designed to prevent land from sitting empty forever. But it's become a favorite tool of developers and HOAs looking to expand their empire. That's when Maggie appeared, riding up in her little golf cart like some kind of suburban warlord. Her voice had that syrupy sweetness that immediately made me want to check my wallet. "Your family abandoned this land, honey," she said, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "We're just putting it to good use for the community." "But here's what really got my blood boiling," I said, my teeth clenched. I discovered that her construction crews had diverted the small creek that feeds Pop's Dam. The water level was dropping every single day, and with it, 45 years of careful water management that had helped our neighbors through droughts, floods, and everything in between. As I stood there watching the water level drop, Maggie's parting shot echoed in my ears. "You should have stayed closer to home, soldier boy." That's when I knew this wasn't just about land. It was war. I hired the first attorney I could find. Big mistake. This guy quoted me $85,000 just to challenge the zoning change. Turns out, while I was serving my country, Maggie's husband, Rick, had pushed through an emergency zoning modification. My family's land went from agricultural pre-validation to residential development zone faster than you can say conflict of interest. But here's where my Army Corps training came in handy. While that overpriced lawyer was shuffling papers and billing hours, I was digging through the county records like I was hunting for IEDs. And just like in Afghanistan, the devil was in the details. I found Pops' original 1978 dam construction permits, and they were beautiful. See, Pops didn't just build that dam himself. He worked directly with the Army Corps of Engineers for flood control and watershed management. That meant federal jurisdiction. And here's your first knowledge nugget. Any dam built with federal guidance creates federal jurisdiction that local HOAs can't override, period. The metallic taste of adrenaline hit my tongue as I realized what I'd found. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore. It was a federal case. But wait, it gets better. While I was photocopying permits at the courthouse, I stumbled across a 1923 water rights deed buried in the old records. My great-grandfather had purchased senior water rights to the entire Willow Creek watershed. These rights were older than the city, older than the county's municipal water system, older than every single one of those McMansions sitting on my land. They weren't just stealing my property. They were stealing my water. Meanwhile, Maggie was busy playing the victim. She organized an emergency HOA meeting about the dangerous dam structure, complete with a local news crew she'd obviously tipped off in advance. I watched her on the evening news, standing in front of her perfectly manicured lawn, talking about children's safety and neighborhood security. "We're just concerned about our children's safety," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "That dam looks ready to burst, and we have families living right downstream." The funny thing about local news is they love a good story, but they're not always great with follow-up research. If they'd bothered to check, they would have found that my dam had passed its most recent safety inspection with flying colors. But Maggie wasn't done. She posted on the Nextdoor app, you know, that digital neighborhood watch where HOA presidents go to flex their petty authority. Her post warned about aggressive property disputes and unstable individuals in the area. She never mentioned my name, but she didn't have to. In a community that small, everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with cedar pollen hung heavy in the August air as I stood on my front porch each evening, watching their construction crews work double shifts. They were racing to finish those houses before I could get any kind of legal injunction. Every night I counted new foundation pours. Every night the water level in Pop's Dam dropped another inch. That's when I called my old Army buddy Tony Riggs, who now works for the EPA Enforcement Division. 20 minutes on the phone with Tony taught me more about environmental law than 3 hours with that expensive attorney. Tony said, if they're diverting a natural waterway without federal permits, that's a Clean Water Act violation. And if your dam has federal jurisdiction, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I started documenting everything. Trail cameras around the property perimeter, time-stamped photos of every water diversion, flow measurements at 3 different points along the creek. My sister Sarah called from California, begging me to just take the money and walk away. But this wasn't about money anymore. It was about the crunch of gravel under construction boots that had no business being on my land. It was about the sound of Maggie's heels clicking across courthouse marble during zoning hearings that should never have happened. It was about the bitter taste of courthouse coffee during research sessions that revealed just how deep this corruption went. But most of all, it was about that dam. Pops built it to help the community during dry spells. For 45 years, it had been a source of life for our neighbors downstream. Maggie's crew was turning it into a decorative pond for McMansions. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about restoring the natural order that had sustained this community for generations. Maggie had systematically destroyed the local farming community. Miguel Santos lost his family's century-old farm. Mrs. Chen's ancestral garden withered without creek water. 3 other families were forced to sell generational properties to Rick's eminent domain schemes. But the federal environmental investigators were scheduled to visit next month. Perfect timing. If I could demonstrate natural flood patterns before their inspection, it would prove the HOA development violated multiple federal laws. As storm clouds gathered on the horizon, I made the decision that would change everything. Time to honor Pop's legacy and open those gates. You don't just open a dam without a plan. This wasn't revenge. It was a military operation with legal cover, environmental justification, and community support. If you like this story, hit that like button, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more HOA tales and real-life neighborhood drama each week.